right, my friends, welcome to the foundation, man, where we are going to lay down the law on how you make this shit happen, right? How do you become a peak performer? As you tuned in, hopefully, and if you haven't, go back and check out the previous episodes. We talked a little bit about identifying what you want, understanding the power of the what. We talked about the power of the why, understanding how not to negotiate with yourself, how to create leverage on yourself to get that thing done, as well as identifying the 20%, right, for doing that. And then the most important part in our last segment, man, we talked about the Have It All lifestyle, the 4 Bs. I'm not even telling you what the 4 Bs are. You got to go check that episode out if you want to know what the 4 Bs are to give you what we say you can have, which is you can have it all, right? But in order to do that, it comes down to foundational work, right? And this is what I like to call the blocking and the tackling, right? I love sports analogies. Blocking and tackling refers to us going back to the basics, right? Going back to the basics. And so in this segment, the foundation, I want to go back to the basics of how do you show up and be your best self? Well, it starts with how you start your day. Understand that. Now, at every level of football I've ever played, coaches all say the same thing for the start of a game. Here's what they say, my friends. They say, hey, listen, the first play of the game, they tell every player, no matter if you're on offense or defense, they say, hey, go knock the shit out of somebody the first play. Why? Why do they tell players that? Here's why. Because ideally, you are setting the tempo and the tone for the rest of the game. You're letting that player know, hey, dude, it's going to be like this all night long. So prepare for the worst. Get ready because I'm coming, right? Now, the same thing is true in life, my friends. We have to do the same thing when we set the tempo and the tone for our day. Now, in our first segments, we talked about big concepts of peak performance and what they do, how they do it. We're talking about the X's and O's now, the blocking and tackling, breaking it down to the micro level to say, well, how do you start doing that? Well, taking control of your day. I want you to think about this from another sports angle really quickly. How many professional teams or college teams have you ever witnessed drive up to the stadium to play a game, get directly off the bus, and go directly on the field and start playing? Zero. Zero, my friends. No one does that shit. Why? Because they understand the power of preparation. Understand, we see professional athletes all the time in the locker room before games, listening to their music, stretching, doing yoga, some of them doing, meditation, all kind of different things in their own routine, right? Because they understand the power of preparation so that by the time they get on the field, on the court, on the baseball diamond, I can be my best self and I'm ready to knock it out and go rock and roll. Well, if that's the case, then if we need to treat ourselves like athletes, why is it then that we in the construction industry, we roll our asses out of bed, drive to the job site, jump out of our car after downing a couple Red Bulls and Vienna sausages and think we're going to be our best self? Bullshit. Man, you're not going to be your best self at all. And if you're doing a good job, trust me, you could be way better, my friends, if you adopt this one principle of what we call a virtuous cycle, right? A virtuous cycle. So what's a virtuous cycle? Well, it's the cycle in which you implement in your life and how you operate and how you show up in the world every single day, right? So you'll see, if you're watching, you get a chance to see Alex's virtuous cycle. If not, if you're just listening, I'll do my best to explain it to you, right? But understand, before I show you my virtuous cycle, you don't have to do it exactly like Alex. Yours may be different. Now, I'm a wild man. My wife looks at my cycle and she's like, dude, you're nuts. Get the hell out of here, right? She's like, just do that in another room. I'm sleeping in here, right? But here's the deal. Alex's cycle, I start waking up at 4:30. I'm a 4:30 wake up guy every day. Probably 90% of the year, I'm a 4:30 wake up guy. And when I get out of the bed, man, I am on all cylinders. What you see right now is what happens when my feet hit the floor at 4:30, which is why my wife Sabrina's like, dude, get out of the room, right? Now, when I get up, the first thing that I jump into is prayer and meditation and journaling. So for me, it's getting my mind right. In journaling, I want to challenge you to do this. It's creating a gratitude practice. I think about the first 3 things that come to mind that I'm grateful for that happened the previous day. These are things like hanging out with my kids, maybe something went well on the job, health, finances, a home to stay in. It really centers my focus for the day, right? And so starting off with prayer and meditation, and then from there, I go into a 5 to 8 minute personal development time. I want you to think about this. So that personal development is maybe getting better at my job, being a better leadership coach, reading and understanding some type of leadership principle, understanding something that makes me a better father, a better husband, whatever it is that I may want to do at that point in time, I'm focusing in on that. Right now, I'm reading something called Young Forever, and it talks about principles on what you can do. So I literally listen to this podcast 5 to 8 minutes, and then I cut it off. And from there, I do a short workout, anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes. Understand, I don't have a lot of time. I'm practicing what we talked about in the last segment, that 80-20 rule, right? The 20% of things, chest, back, squats, abs. Oh, dude, we're done. We're good, right? On that right there to give me the results I want. And then from there, joking and laughing with my wife and kids so that I can fill that bucket up with them. If I'm on the road traveling, it's a text message or a video call. If I'm here at the house, it's joking around with them. And then the next thing I do, which is usually around 6 o'clock, it's me setting and planning what I call the MVP of the day. Now, the MVP of the day means the most valuable priority of the day. This is the most important thing that I can do. Understanding this, that, hey, listen, Alex, if everything got tied up and you could only do one thing today, what's the most important thing that you could do? And so by identifying that before your day starts, you know how you can win your day. So I want you to think about that. 4:30 wake up, prayer, meditation, and journaling, personal development, 5 to 15-minute workout, planning my MVP. Who am I focused on for the first half of my day in the morning? You're right, me. Very selfish. Extremely selfish with my time. Shit, my dog even knows don't mess with me during that time, right? Why? Here's why, my friends. Because I'm filling myself up so that I can be my best self and give that out to the world, to my team, to my family, to the construction industry. I'm giving that away once I finish that development time. Most times, my friends, we never spend time developing ourselves and pouring into ourselves. And so we're doing what I like to call operating on fumes. Because understand this, by the time your family gets up, by the time you make it to the job site, everyone that you encounter, your team, your supervisor, your employees, your customers and clients, they're what I like to call takers. They're taking energy and life from you. And if you're ever going to be a peak performer, you have to be at such a level that you've prepared yourself, you've poured into yourself that you can then give out at extreme levels to be the best that you can be. But oftentimes, we're stressed, we're irritable, we're frustrated simply because we haven't spent that me time investing in us. So, if you're listening or if you're watching, what I need you to do is pause the tape. In the words of my 10-year-old Aubrey, pause, right? Pause the tape and think about that. Your morning virtuous cycle. What should that look like? If you're going to show up and be the best you that you can be, what should you implement in that cycle? And understand, maybe it's not as intense as Alex's. I have one foreman who lives in Miami, Florida. His virtuous cycle in the morning, he said, Alex, if I could just add one thing to my cycle in the morning before coming into work, it would be to just sit down on the couch and eat a big bowl of Fruity Pebbles. I'm like, well, damn, dude, you need to just adjust your schedule so you can sit down and eat that big old bowl of Fruity Pebbles, brother. If that's going to make you your best self, that me time. I had someone last week that said, hey, Alex, if I could just go outside and watch the sun coming up for 5 minutes, man, with a cup of coffee before I come into work, that would be phenomenal. Understand this, my friends. Oftentimes, those things that make us our best self, they're small. And it only takes a little bit of time to make adjustments, especially when we change our mindset on this concept of not trying to hit home runs, but hitting singles. Maybe it only requires me to get up 5 extra minutes a morning. Maybe it requires me not to hit that snooze 3 times, only hit it 2, so that I can get this thing done and incorporate it in my virtuous cycle and show up and be my best self. By you doing this, my friends, by the time you enter the work, you're your best self. It's as if you've done the mental preparation as an athlete, getting ready to have the best game of your life. So what do I do after getting in? Well, the first thing, if you can, is organizing your day in such a way that you can spend the first 90 minutes of your day working on your MVP, working on what you said was the most valuable priority. Because understand, it's kind of like the concept of eat that frog first, right? Eat the frog. If you could do the most difficult, most important thing that you said in the first 90 minutes of your workday, shit, man, it's all downhill from there. And if you can begin to do that, you can begin to master time and how you do it. right? Now, as you begin to think about that, from there, I would love for you to, at some point in time, have at least a to-do list. And don't put it in your head, have it on paper. But what I need you to do with this virtual cycle is to have a to-do list, the to-do list that we call on steroids. What do I mean by that? Most times, people make a to-do list, and they have all of these items that they need to do, and they leave it at that. How often does that to-do list roll over day after day after day? Most times, a shitload. Well, here's why, my friends. What I want to challenge you to do is, as you talk about your virtual cycle, when you make that to-do list after your MVP, all of those other items that you have on that list, when you write them on that list, the next thing I need you to do is this, my friends. Write down a guesstimate of how much time you think each of those activities will take you to do. The elite do this. That's what peak performers do. They identify what they're up against. It's like putting a game plan together. Now, the first time I did this, my friends, my to-do list, I'm wondering why I'm not getting shit done. Well, hell, my to-do list was 18 hours long, dude. It's like, shit, dude, you're not getting this shit done today, right? When you begin to do that, you can begin to identify what's reasonable and what's doable, because you don't just kind of fly by the seat of your pants. You've actually thought through and guesstimated it. Right now, once I begin to guesstimate the time, the next thing I need you to do is prioritize what's most important. Because understand, as you're going through that list, you want to kind of shift and go with those things that are most important on that list. So by writing them down, actually coming in to understand how much time each of them are going to take you and prioritizing them, you know exactly what you're in for today to get all of that done from a time standpoint. And from there, I want to challenge you to put it on the calendar. If you put it on the calendar, put it in places, the reason you want to do that, my friends, is because here's the deal. Every one of us in here, we know that you're going to have interruptions in your day, guaranteed. People are going to blow your shit up. But if you've thought through your to-do list, if you've mapped out the time and how much each of these activities take you, and you've gone that extra step of putting it on a calendar, you know where you have gaps in your schedule so that you can reschedule someone to come in. So instead of just doing exactly what they need right now, especially if it's not urgent, you can say, hey, wait a minute. I'll get to it today, but hey, listen, I need you to come back at 11:30. I have 15 minutes at 11:30. If you could hold off to 11:30, we can get it done. We'll come back. I'll circle back around with you at that time. It keeps you focused on what's most important so that you can knock out your list so that that to-do list doesn't just continually repeat day after day, and you can really begin to get things done, all right? Here's the next principle I need you to incorporate here in the foundation. It's understanding this, and I'm gonna talk about a sports concept really quickly. Every sport, let me make sure of this. Baseball doesn't, but you know they have endings where they can do that. Now, what's halftime? Well, this is where players rest, coaches regroup, they re-strategize, and they come back to the second half of the game, right? The best coaches are able to make adjustments at halftime and come back to win. I want to challenge you to implement this concept in your day. What do I mean? Well, I want you to take a break midday and assess how you're doing emotionally, mentally, spiritually, as well as physically, and how it's affecting your day. You may have to readjust your game plan so that you can be most effective for the next half of the day. When you begin to do this, this is what we like to call hitting the reset button. Sometimes just closing your eyes, taking a 2-minute meditation, thinking about what went on that day, how you can change it, what you may need to focus on more and make adjustments, you can begin to win that day. The last two things are this, my friends: connecting with family. You want to make sure that you have that in your schedule, in your virtual cycle. For me, that's me getting home. If I'm on the road, it's me texting or calling my family. And then last but not least, finding time to refresh, recoup, get into bed. So you can get sleep, man, and wake back up to do it all again the next day. The elite understand the power of disciplined schedules, such as this, having a virtuous cycle that you say, hey, you know what? I refuse to negotiate with myself. This is my cycle. This is what I do. I'm going to do all that I can to invest in myself that first piece of the day so that I can be the best leader that I can be as we go forward, right? So we've talked a little bit about that, the foundation, the X's and O's of how you show up and how do you be your best self and how do you knock the shit out of life the first step in the morning so that you can set the tempo and the tone for the entire day, right? In this last segment, we're going to really begin to frame it out to show you what you need to focus on, what you're up against, right? And how you ultimately can win this thing and pull it all together. So I look forward to seeing you in the frame out when we really frame out the have-it-all lifestyle as well as the habits of people want. Hey, my friends, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to challenge you to make sure you check out the next segment, and I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast.